Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Getting the Job Done, Global Climate Goals and the Energy Transition Workforce. We are very happy to host all of you today. Very happy that you could join us, friends, colleagues. This being UN General Assembly Week, we'd also like to thank Excellencies who are joining us for this very important discussion all about capacity building in the Global South. If I could quickly move to the next slide. I would like to just give you an overview of who you'll be hearing from today. I'm Vikram Singh, Director of International Partnerships in the Global South program at RMI. You'll be hearing from an esteemed partner. We have an announcement to make today. Justin Johnson, Director of Climate at the Children's Investment Fund Foundation. Matt Jordan, Principal at the Energy Transitions Academy at RMI. Ms. Leticia Demares, Director of the Climate Finance Access Network, and Mr. Suleiman Babumanu, our Nigeria Country Director at RMI. A brief overview of what we hope to accomplish today during this panel. I will open up with a set of opening remarks. I promise to be very brief. I know you haven't come to listen to me. You want to come to listen to our esteemed panelists and what we're doing. We'll have some video messages, not from ourselves, but from the beneficiaries of our programs, which I think are a real testament to our work and what we're trying to do in the Global South. We'll open up to a panel discussion with the aforementioned panelists that I just introduced. We'll get a quick overview of the Energy Transitions Academy, and then we'll open it up to hopefully a very rich question and answer session with all of you. So again, please feel free to drop in your questions into the chat. A couple of opening remarks from me. You know, this is really about what RMI has done with its Global South program is that we've repositioned ourselves for radical implementation at scale. And what does that really mean practically? It means that we've redesigned our program in the upstream sense to create an enabling environment to really get projects off the ground. In the midstream, we've concentrated a lot of our efforts into project pilots and demonstrations that are now ready for scaling and really moving those radically towards scaling in the remaining years of the decisive decade as time is running out. And then lastly, in our third downstream sort of box is linking all of this to climate finance, to making sure that it's sustainable and that we are using innovative forms of finance, such as blended finance, which we'll be hearing about very soon. Cross-cutting all of this is workforce development and capacity building. And that's a very important thing to keep in mind as we go through today's discussion. The second point I'd like to make today is really about ecosystems. You know, the Global South program operates in islands, the Caribbean, Africa, Southeast Asia. Each one of these ecosystems is quite different, but capacity building allows us to look at the entire value chain that I just described very briefly for you and focus very targeted interventions on where we can come in and out to help a country along its energy pathway. So that's very important to know that we aren't approaching this through a cookie cutter approach, but a very tailor-made approach for each environment that we're engaged in. We fully recognize that we can't solve the climate change crisis or the energy transition if we don't have the people to do the work. Moreover, it's important to note that RMI's belief is that we can't progress towards a just energy transition unless it's locally led, contrary to a fly-in, fly-out consultancy model. We're pursuing a variety of approaches to address the challenge of rapidly scaling up our human and institutional capacity where we work. Some of our approaches are highly targeted to serving specific practitioner groups in specific regions, such as the Climate Finance Access Network, or CFAN, or the Women in Renewable Energy, or WIRE, as you'll hear about very shortly. And some of our approaches, like the Energy Transitions Academy, are focused on driving innovative approaches to capacity building and workforce skills development across a variety of topics, regions, and audiences. Without further ado, I wanted to introduce our first speaker today, Mr. Justin Johnson, Director of Climate at the Children's Investment Fund Foundation. We have some exciting joint news to share with you today. Several years ago, SIF, as his organization is known, invested in the development of what has become the Clean Power Hub, a first of its kind online skills development and networking platform that until recently was focused on getting more renewables into the power sectors of Southeast Asia. Just this morning, RMI announced that in agreement with SIF, we have acquired the Clean Power Hub and are merging it with our Energy Transitions Academy. We're grateful for our continued partnership with SIF and are extremely excited about this new development and the opportunity to expand the reach of our great program to other audiences in the Global South. Justin, I'm hoping you can share a little bit of insights and perspective on the history of this program and where our new partnership is headed. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Vikram. And it's great to be here. It's great to see you all. I mean, for those of you who, like me, are not in New York for Climate Week, you might be feeling a little bit of FOMO, a little bit of fear of missing out, but have no fear, because Climate Week can come to us with online events such as this. And I'm really glad I could be here and you could be here. So thanks for joining. As Vikram said, SIF, the Children's Investment Fund Foundation, is a global philanthropy focused on solving the problems that prevent children from surviving and thriving. And climate change is clearly one of the biggest challenges facing all of us. And we have a dedicated grant-making team focused on that. It's clear to all of us we have no time to waste. We must surge efforts to unleash clean energy at scale. We must deliver on a rapid and clean energy transition in developed countries and in sustainable development in emerging economies. And of course, that means we need the targets, we need the policies, we need the regulatory framework, we need the finance, we need all of these things, as Vikram outlined. But these things don't happen in abstract. They're developed by people, and they're best developed by people learning from other people who've done it before. We don't have time to just rely on the BAU approach to capacity development. The speed and scale of the challenge means we need a more dynamic approach. And so some 2 years ago, the Propel team and SIF initiated the development of the Clean Power Hub, an online hub, curating all of the best knowledge and best practices needed to accelerate the clean energy transition. And it wasn't just about collating knowledge, it was about making that knowledge actionable with solution-orientated how-to guides to equip practitioners in the field with tools to act. Now, I am so proud of the platform and the content that Graham, Matt, and the team have developed and curated, but we knew we were underperforming in terms of impact and in terms of reaching the market that needed this. Discussions with RMI highlighted their excellent Energy Transition Academy, a peer learning and community engagement program. And we realized that combining the online functionality of the Clean Power Hub and the in-person experiential learning of the ETA seemed like a perfect match. And of course, RMI's reach, deep partnerships, and undisputed credibility means we were more likely to achieve far greater impact than we could have imagined on our own. Because ultimately, this is about ensuring the actionable expertise is in the hands of everyone, and particularly those who need it most. So they have the networks, the tools, and the skills to make the energy transition a reality. We're all talking about implementation. We all know that's necessary. And I am really confident that the Energy Transition Academy, through this integration, will have an important role in actually making that happen. So SIF is delighted to continue to support RMI in this transition and the integration and acquisition of the Clean Power Hub. And we really look forward to your engagement and partnership, how you can use and partner with the ETA, and how together we can accelerate the clean energy workforce development that's needed everywhere, especially in the Global South. Thanks.
Thank you, Justin. Extremely well said. I think, there's no greater testament to our work. We're sitting here in the Global North, and we are part of a Global North organization. We're very cognizant of that fact. I think the biggest testimonial to our work and the moves that RMI is making is to hear from some of the beneficiaries of our programs. And we prepared some video messages from you from some of these programs as the best messengers of really what's being done on the ground. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first video from the Climate Finance Access Network, or CFAN, as I mentioned before. CFAN supports in developing countries in securing and structuring finance for climate investments. By cultivating a network of highly trained, embedded climate finance advisors, CFAN builds the capacity of developing countries to more quickly access climate finance and achieve their climate objectives. Again, this is all about embedding capacity in ministries and growing it there, contrary to the fly-in, fly-out consultancy model that I alluded to before. Without further ado, over to the video.
I wouldn't have been able to make that connections if I wasn't a CFAN advisor here. So talking about the villages, when we initially started the conversation with them, so we really didn't know what the community is, what the existing practices are, what they're looking to conserve or what their traditions are. So working with them, we basically learned how village communities operate. Obviously there are community hierarchies that you have to follow. You just cannot directly contact the chief there. So this is channel basically you have to follow to get to what you want to achieve out of that. And in this case, we were quite happy that they came forward and they want to take ownership of projects, so which is something very important, I think, for all climate finance projects. Country ownership and community level ownership is really important, because if we don't have the buy-in from them, it's definitely not going to work. You can design the best proposals on the document, but in reality it does not make sense.
Fascinating. We're very proud of our work with CFAN. You'll be hearing directly from Ms. Leticia de Moraes very shortly in terms of where that program is going. It is a proven model. It has scaled throughout the Pacific. It is now looking towards the Caribbean and towards Africa. So more on that to come very soon. Now, a little bit about another acquisition that RMI has recently made, the Women in Renewable Energy Network, or WIRE, as we refer to it. The Energy Transitions Academy WIRE Network is a group of professional women working in energy and island nations, again, recognizing that gender is a big part of this conversation. WIRE works to eliminate barriers to entry and career advancement in sustainable energy by establishing a community of high-achieving and motivated female women professionals. Why did you join the Women in Renewable Energy Network? Over to the video, please.
Hola, mi nombre es Luis Marcano, soy ingeniero electricista de profesión. Trabajo en la industria de la energía renovable, como ven. Si tú tuvieras más filas, hicieras más de 4. La primera motivación mía, obviamente, fue demostrarle al mundo que yo puedo tener algo mío, mi compañía. La profesión que yo ejerzo es una de las más dominadas por hombres también aquí en Puerto Rico, y más lo que es construcción y electricidad. Así que lo que me motivó es ser una de las pioneras, una de las primeras. Esa fue mi gran motivación, y espero poder ayudar a otras muchachas que vayan detrás de mí a que no pasen a lo mejor el mismo trabajo que pasé yo, para poder fundar mi compañía y tratar de echarla para adelante, que todavía estamos en ese proceso.
Thank you very much for that. We are, that's an excellent example of our work. We're very proud of our work in Puerto Rico, where we're working to scale microgrids. The topic of today's panel is not Puerto Rico, but just want to take a moment to let everyone know that we stand in solidarity with our partners on the ground in Puerto Rico in light of Hurricane Fiona and all that they're going through there on the 5th year anniversary of Hurricane Maria. Next, on to our Global Fellowship Program. The Energy Transition Academy's Global Fellowship Program empowers professionals who are actively advancing distributed energy resource projects through peer-to-peer learning, advanced technical training, networking, and leadership opportunities. What does it mean to be a part of the Energy Transition Academy Fellowship community? Over to the video.
In terms of the ETA Summit, I felt as though that this particular program and this fellowship allowed like-minded individuals who live in similar states to connect, but not only to connect on a renewable energy platform, but to connect personally. We had people from the US Virgin Islands, from the British Virgin Islands, from Trinidad, from Barbados, but some of those same individuals from the British Virgin Islands, they had similar effects of Hurricane Irma. And we can relate in the Bahamas because we had Hurricane Irma in Ragged Island that destroyed the entire island. So this particular fellowship allowed the RMI team to come in and branch those islands that are separated and was able to join them together as one Caribbean country. And now we're able to not only flourish, but the knowledge that was transferred from the RMI team down to us, we can now go out and now start to continue to spread the good word of renewable energy and how we can go forward in progressing with our projects. I always say one thing, especially when it comes to the Caribbean islands. I stick with the 6 C's, especially after this RMI summit. I know we like to use acronyms, and I came up with these 6 C's. It is Caribbean countries collaborating on climate change. Because right now, even though renewable energy can bring so much economical benefits, at the end of the day, the main goal, and what should be the main goal, is to also to try to combat climate change.
Wow. So proud of the words and acronym that Lorenza developed there. This is really about collaboration, unlocking local capacity, and again, putting Global South voices in the driver's seat. I'd like to now transition over to our panel discussion. We have a very rich discussion planned for you today. If I could invite the panelists to come on screen, please. Matt Jordan, Leticia Demares, Mr. Suleiman Babumanu. My first question to you, Ms. Demares, you come from a very successful background as a climate negotiator. You've been doing this for 20 years. You have launched the CFAN, or Climate Finance Access Network, which is now proven to be a great success and is rapidly expanding. What is your perspective on the importance of empowering the global workforce and so that they can accelerate the energy transition and address climate challenges?
Thanks for the question, Vikram, and thanks for having me on the panel. I would say my perspective and the approach we have taken with the Climate Finance Access Network is really to identify where the bottlenecks are, the bottlenecks that prevent implementation of climate solutions at scale and at speed. And clearly in the Global South, and in particular within the most vulnerable countries we are working with, you were mentioning our work in the Pacific with small island developing states, but also with least developed countries in sub-Saharan Africa, where we are looking to expand. Working with these countries, it's really clear that capacity constraints represent the major bottlenecks. And there are constraints at many levels, constraints in translating international commitments under the Paris Agreement into climate targets and regulations. There are constraints in translating these targets into investment plans, and there are constraints in translating those plans into bankable projects. And yet again, when it comes to implement those projects, they on the ground, there again, there are a lot of constraints, and all of that leads to being stuck in a position where countries are scrambling through red tape to access finance. The risk of doing business with these countries is perceived as very high, and their absorptive capacity remains limited. So at RMI, we see all these bottlenecks, of course, as our entry points. And the various programs represented today on the panels are targeting those bottlenecks. And we really aim to provide tailored capacity development support for each of those. And of course, each country faces unique challenges, but there are also strong commonalities. And you mentioned the main one, which is the traditional technical assistance model based on the fly-in, fly-out internal consultant model that cannot deliver at scale and at speed, and also has largely failed on passing on knowledge. Instead, it has resulted in keeping the Global South overly reliant on external expertise, knowledge, and know-how. So I think we can all agree here that there are not enough international consultants in the world to implement the Paris Agreement and transform the global energy sector. So the energy transition has to be homegrown and it has to be country-led. And it's exactly, I think, if there's one common principle to all of our programs, it's exactly there. So at CFAN, we focus really on growing the pool of climate finance practitioners in seeds and in LDC's region to unlock climate finance access. And to this end, what we do is we work with our network of partners, global and regional partners. We locally hire and then train advisors that we then embed in ministries, but also, and this is a further development of CFAN in regional organizations, to accelerate the prioritization of project pipelines and expedite the development of projects and their financial structuring. So we have developed a comprehensive state-of-art climate finance curriculum, and we provide extensive hands-on training. We set up a bespoke training models website that contains self-paced learning material, but also provides live sessions that we complete with in-person top-up trainings and coaching session on project concepts. And this training is being delivered by global and regional partners, and has been extremely successful, and really embed a very strong learning by doing and train the trainers approach. Our trainers in turn will be training over stakeholders within the countries. And when you were mentioning what we aim to do is really to strengthen the whole ecosystem, that's exactly what we are trying to do. Train the key private and public stakeholders, and really help fast tracking project generation and delivery. And maybe I think one last point is I believe empowering the workforce goes even beyond, as we are ensuring that climate action, because it is homegrown, is truly being transformational and respectful of country-specific context, aligns with the country priorities, realities, and aspirations. And the effectiveness of project implementation is even better and more impactful when those principles are followed. So to quickly answer your question, Vikram, my perspective is that without developing and supplementing capacity in many countries of the Global South, unlocking financing for climate action would take years. So it is therefore absolutely critical.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. You said so much there, and you alluded to that word that I love so much, ecosystems. We are, in fact, addressing each ecosystem as its own unique environment, and that's so important. To talk a little bit about the unique African challenges, we've invited the esteemed Nigeria Country Director, Mr. Suleiman Babumanu, to join us. Suleiman, what do you see as the important drivers for empowering the global workforce, and how can we accelerate the energy transition in spite of these challenges in Nigeria and more broadly in Africa?
Yeah, thank you very much, Vikram, and thank you for inviting me to the panel. First of all, alluding to what Letitia has mentioned, I mean, we cannot underestimate the importance of human capital development within the energy transition conversation. What are available resources and skills within different countries or geographies, for example, that are available to cope with, this rapid energy transition conversation and activities. If you look at the statistics, some of the, numbers, for example, IEA reports that is put out there, you're looking at about 30 million new clean energy jobs, between now and 2050, for example. And this includes, new workforce and, professionals that are going to be, transferring from other kind of professions and so on. So as countries globally, are establishing targets to meet, with their energy transition plans. Of course, these targets and, governments are putting, and even companies, for example, also need to focus on how they can build on that workforce that would succeed in their net zero emission goals. And we are already seeing, especially within Africa and in Nigeria, for example, how workforce, the limitation in workforce is already, delaying and affecting the rapid, implementation of projects in the clean energy space and delaying progress. This, like Letitia mentioned, limits your capacity to be able to raise finance. It limits your capacity to be able to adequately design projects. It limits your capacity to be able to even select the right type of projects and the right type of partnerships that are required to be able to, build projects that are going to be viable, and sustainable. So specifically, given specific examples with Nigeria, one of the work we're doing under the Africa Energy Program in Nigeria, for example, is, working with utilities to develop utility-enabled DERs. You can clearly see how the conversation has shifted, from a point of view of like an understanding of what business model we're trying to propose, as compared to right now when we have done some level of capacity building, which we intend to build on. And you can see how, utilities and developers have embraced, the kind of concept, where you have a partnership between developers, and utilities and a customer, for example, in a particular ring-fenced area to improve on their supply of electricity within that said area. So in my experience, I have seen how utilities here, for example, have completely disengaged and don't want to talk about that collaboration with developers, because it is almost seen as if you're taking away a customer from a utility. However, this has improved with some of the capacity building work that we have done, and partnering within the African Energy Program and ETA and RMI. We're of course working towards expanding this, as you have mentioned in your opening, Vikram, to ensure that we develop this capacity to be able to do more projects, because in Nigeria, for example, you're dealing with energy transition and energy access, which are two very, very important points to pay attention to. Over to you, Vikram.
Thank you so much, Mr. Babamanu. That was fantastic. And again, quite different from what Letitia was referring to there, building capacity in terms of access to finance. Here you're talking about utilities and developers and really how to, really embolden and hasten the energy access issue in Nigeria, more broadly in Africa. Matt, if I may introduce you to the crowd, you've just joined RMI through the Clean Power Hub acquisition. Welcome. And what is your perspective on this, on empowering the workforce? First of all, when I say the term workforce, what does it mean to you in the context of the Clean Power Hub? And what do you see as the challenges towards scaling workforce development?
Yeah, thank you so much, Vikram, and thank you, Letitia and Sulman. When I hear the term workforce, it means so many things to so many different people. Everything from sort of ecosystem leaders and industry CEOs, senior government officials, all the way down to day laborers, pipe fitters, installers, technicians, etc. In the work that we're developing with the Energy Transition Academy, we're highly focused on really sort of creating these enabling environments through the upskilling and professional development of these ecosystem leaders, policymakers and regulators who can create fertile enabling environments, utility system operators who can really weave more renewables into the power system, project developers, project lenders, corporates who can shift their large scale operations to 100% renewable energy. I do believe that the approach to capacity development that we're developing through the Energy Transition Academy is applicable beyond these sort of ecosystem leader categories. But for the time being, that's really where we're focusing. With respect to sort of how important workforce is to driving decarbonization agendas and the clean energy transition forward, it's incredibly important. I mean, there's a ton of dialogue in our space about about a just transition, about green jobs, about the importance of people and a people-centric transition. But we are short millions of jobs in order to sort of actually get this work done. We're falling well short, and it's hugely important that we as a community, the international development sector, the climate action community, that we really look this problem in the face and admit to ourselves, like, we are not done investing in capacity development. We have not solved this problem yet. And if we don't solve it, all of the political commitment and all of the financial alignment in the world won't result in a clean energy transition and 1.5C. So I think this is an incredibly important challenge. I think building climate smart infrastructure and achieving the clean energy transition, it is possibly one of the biggest economic opportunities in history. And if we don't do it, it will likely lead to one of the biggest economic and human catastrophes in history, right? So like we've got to get this right, and we can't assume that business as usual is going to get us there, because it hasn't so far. And so I think that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited to be at RMI now, and I'm so excited about this Clean Power Hub acquisition and the merger with the Energy Transition Academy, and excited about the opportunity to work with professionals like Letitia and Suleiman. I think we're really looking at this problem and really thinking about it in a very ambitious and large scale way.
Thank you so much. As it hopefully is evident to the listeners here today, I mean, RMI is making a very huge commitment to this all throughout the energy value chain. I'd like to invite the panelists to keep their answers limited to just 1 to 2 minutes for this next round of questions. I want to keep us on time so we have enough time for a rich Q&A. But, Letitia, back to you. We hear a lot about these terms: demand-driven, locally driven. What does that look like in the context of your program? How does it play out, and how important is it?
For CFAN, country-drivenness is the cornerstone of our operations. We are working with countries if they express interest in working with us. The advisors are hired very collaboratively with the host organization and ministry. We co-develop the mandate of our advisors with either the government or the regional organization. So we agree on the terms of their mandates. What are the priority sectors within the country? What are the priority projects or project IDs, the most vulnerable communities we need to focus on? So it guides us at every stage of our operations. But I would say also faithful to RMI's evidence-based approach. Even before we launched CFAN, we conducted an extensive market study and consultations in 2018. And basically, we talked to about 100 stakeholders from 45 different countries to know, what was the demand, what are the needs, and the resounding demand was for support in growing expertise and know-how in project development. So this midstream that you were talking about, Vikram. Another clear demand was also to embed those advisors. Again, don't give us an advisor and then send them away after some time. And I think Shelvin's testimony of his work in Fiji really shows the value of embedding advisors and taking the time to build those connections with the communities, building the trust, building the relationship, and really to generate the best project possible. So that is to us putting the governments and the communities firmly in the driver's seats. And ensuring that at every step of the project development, they are not only consulted, but they provide direct input into the making of the project. Maybe another aspect, I believe, is that we were talking about empowerment, and the more you grow this expertise of developing bankable and impactful project, the more you strengthen the convening and programming power of governments and stakeholders. And Suleiman mentioned it's not just about developing projects, it's about developing good projects. And I would go even further. It's about also the possibility to say no to bad projects. And having that capacity to not just receive ready-made projects because you don't have the capacity to develop your own, I think makes a difference and allows in some situation to simply say no to bad project which can be fossil fuel-based projects. So we are trying to shift the power balance and really make sure that countries can really decide on their future plans and how they transform their economies.
Thank you so much for that very rich answer. Back to you, Suleiman, and I think Letitia put you on the hot seat. It's not about just projects, it's about good projects. And how are you, as the Nigeria country director, leading that work in Nigeria and making sure that Nigerian voices are the ones leading that effort?
Yeah, thank you very much, Vikram, for that question, and thank you, Letitia. So I think part of what we do, as you know very well, and for some of our attendees, as RMI, we work very closely with partners, right? We work directly with governments, with utilities, with developers, so that we're able to identify and address specific, country needs, right? Part of the work that we've done, especially with GIAP, is especially around the utility-enabled DRs again, is to conduct a needs assessment, right? Similar to what Letitia has mentioned, right? What are the needs that you need to address to be able to, again, not only be able to design projects, but projects that are, within regulatory frameworks, in different countries, and projects that are able to attract the right type of funding, and projects that are going to be sustainable. And within that, client where we conducted these needs assessment, working with the utilities and distribution network companies, we identified something around 70 needs, to be able to address, issues around utility-enabled DRs. And this is a direct, specific example of how, you can achieve these objectives. Now, of course, capacity building is one of them. To ensure that both the utilities and the government officials, as well as the developers, all understand the concepts that we're trying to develop. And these capacity building centered around as basic as renewable energy fundamentals, understanding the kind of legal agreements that you need to go into between, all parties, the business and financial models that you need to develop to make these projects bankable and, viable, understanding the regulatory framework, site selection, feasibility analysis, system design, how do you raise finance, network infrastructure, upgrades, and grid maintenance, right? These are all of the things that we've all identified, to develop capacity, and together with ETA, we're coming up with the global fellowship program that would help to address some of those issues. But we're not only doing that as RMI. There's also the need to be able to do it sustainably. And again, we looked out for local partners that we can partner with, to the extent that you're not only as RMI, coming into the country, despite having the local presence, but you're also partnering with local training institutes in Nigeria that are established the presence, so that these trainings continue to go on and make a good contribution, because you can't solve the entire workforce gap by just, one or two training. It has to be a continuous, sustainable kind of approach. So yeah, you have to have a long-term plan, local collaboration, identify the needs, and be able to address them. Over to you, Vikram.
Thank you so much, Mr. Babamanu. The hardest question to you, Matt, and building on Suleiman's point about the importance of local partnerships, I understand that the Clean Power Hub is regionally agnostic, content agnostic, audience agnostic. Given that it is a tool and a very powerful tool, how do we ensure that, again, that it's locally led, and again, putting Global South leaders in the driver's seat of that conversation?
That you've asked me a tough question that I will be getting to in a few minutes here, when I sort of talk a little bit more about what we're building with the Energy Transition Academy. I think the short answer is partnership, local partnership, to really understand, through local partners, sort of like what are the gaps and needs, and then how can a tool like this intervene to support. And from crosswalking those gap assessments and those needs assessments with needs assessments and gap assessments elsewhere around the world, that's how we really begin to develop training and skills development curricula that are able to sort of scale internationally. And that's very much our model: partnership, piloting training curricula on the basis of that partnership, and then beginning to, through partnership, replicate those trainings elsewhere throughout the Global South. And that's very much our model, which I will discuss a little bit more in a couple of minutes here. I want to answer the sort of the foundational question, though, about the importance of being demand-driven and sort of country-led. And I wanted to maybe at the risk of coming off as a little bit jaded, sort of push on the degree to which there's dialogue in our field about the importance of being demand-driven and country-led. Because when I hear demand-driven, what I hear is you are, really understanding the needs of sort of local partners, and you're really listening to what they're asking for, and then as a result of that dialogue and understanding, you're actually providing services that help address those challenges, and really support those local partners in developing their skills, their capacity, and really their clean energy transition agenda. To me, that process, understand the local partners, understand their needs, work with them, listen, and then give them something that actually helps. That's international development 101 to me. And I think the fact that we as a community sort of have to continue to remind ourselves that we have to listen to the local partners, we have to work with the local partners, and we have to help them, I think is just, to me, emblematic of something going on in our sector where maybe international development isn't being done as well as it needs to be, right? And maybe we're falling down on the job. I think the trick is how we go about that. And I think the trick is reaching out, making yourself available, being there when you can, being there on Zoom when you can't, really getting to know the local partners. And I think the biggest trick is setting aside ego and assumptions. Oftentimes, what you'll see in our field is that a consultant will say something along the lines of, what's needed in this region, and in this instance is a consultant, or you'll see an analyst say, what this problem calls for? An analysis. And I really think oftentimes there are a lot of actors and a lot of institutions in our space who are acting like hammers looking for nails. And I think we can't do that. I think we have to listen. We have to not assume that we know what the solution is before we understand the problem. And the best of us, I think, do that. And what we find when we do that is we find real opportunity for impact and real opportunity for local leadership, and also institutionally and personally, opportunities to grow and stretch and do new, interesting things. So for me, being demand driven is just part and parcel with doing this job. And I think the reason that we have to continue to talk about it is because often people in our space are presuming the solution before they really understand the problem.
Thank you very much, Matt. There's a reason I asked you the most challenging question at the end. I want to thank Ms. Demares for joining this panel today and her insights into climate finance, Mr. Babumanu for his insights into the local market in Nigeria and Africa more broadly. Matt, the reason I asked you that challenging question was to let you maybe give us a little bit of an overview of the ETA more generally, how the Clean Power Hub fits into that. So maybe we can segue over to that for the benefit of our listeners. I'd like to keep time relatively limited because we want to get to a rich question and answer session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vikram, and Letitia and Suleiman, and thanks to all of you that are here with us today. We really appreciate your time and interest, and we're looking forward to continuing the conversation after this event. We're very excited to speak with all of you about how we might partner to advance meaningful, high-impact solutions to this question we view as very, very important. How do we develop a global decarbonization workforce that can make good on escalating political and financial commitments? And how do we do that as fast as possible? I do want to sort of take just 10 seconds, though, to offer up sort of a special acknowledgement and thanks to Justin Johnson, who spoke earlier. Had the good fortune of working with some very, very good people over the course of my career. And Justin is very much toward the top of the list, and a tremendous amount of what I'm about to share really is due to his leadership and vision and trust and partnership. So thank you so much for being here with us today, Justin. Next slide, please. There is a lot of great work being done all over the world, as evidenced by Letitia's remarks and CFAN's great work and Suleiman's remarks and all of their great work in Africa and the work of many, many dozens or hundreds of other excellent institutions doing work on this. There's great work being done on capacity development and workforce training on the clean energy transition. And there's a ton of talk about a just transition and green jobs and related ideas. But nevertheless, I don't think there's nearly enough of a focus on this subject. And there's a lot more work that needs to be done. The reality is political commitment to climate action is showing up, and 15C aligned finance is increasingly available. And the economics of clean energy seem to get better every day. And maybe these elements aren't happening as fast as we'd like or as uniformly around the world, but they are happening. However, all of this political will and all of the finance and all of these fundamental economics will mean nothing if we can't take action. And more, the rate limiter on climate action is workforce. We don't have nearly enough people with the right skills to take all of this political will and finance and do something with it. And that's particularly true in the global South. A very interesting IEA report that came out earlier this month highlights this gap. We need something like 30 million clean energy jobs this decade to reach net zero by 2050. That's the next 7 years, this decade. 30 million good, economy growing, well-paying, dignified jobs in 7 years all over the world. How are we going to do that? All of this talk about a just transition and green jobs and green collar jobs and all of this excellent work that's being done by great institutions on workforce and capacity development all over the world, by our international partners, by our local partners, it's still insufficient. It's not enough. Business as usual isn't going to get us there. We have to look at this problem. We have to look at it honestly. We got to look at it in the face, and we have to start to think differently about it. We have to do capacity development differently. And in our view, we have to take all of this great work that's being done by great organizations all over the world, and we have to scale it, and we have to do that right away. Next slide, please. And that's sort of at the heart, that problem, that vision, that's at the heart of what we're trying to do with the with the Energy Transition Academy. And what we're doing here is we're taking the world's best expertise on the clean energy transition and best practices in hands-on capacity development and technical assistance from the international development and climate action sectors. And we are marrying that to the cutting edge and scalable online skills development. And the good news is reskilling huge numbers of professionals is not unique to industries on the front line of the climate crisis. There are ample lessons from other industries that have scaled their own workforce development efforts that we can learn from and leverage. And that's what we're doing with the Energy Transition Academy. The ETA, or the Energy Transition Academy, offers energy practitioners a dynamic, flexible suite of online and in-person skills and network development tools to build their know-how, grow their communities, and drive action. And crucially, the Energy Transition Academy is designed to help extend the impact of partners like you. Next slide, please. So what we have with the ETA is a peer learning and action platform with a mission to connect, amplify, and empower the energy workforce of today and tomorrow. And we do this through 4 flexible, integrated programmatic pillars. The first is community and experience exchange. And this is a portfolio of offerings for practitioners to build and share experience with real-time engagement, projects, and decision-making in peer settings. And this looks like our fellowship programs, study tours, and communities of practice. Next is skills and targeted learning. And this is a group of action-oriented skills development products for practitioners to enhance their skills and know-how. And this includes things like interactive work plans and how-to guides, as well as cohort-based, project-oriented professional development courses. Next is advisory services and peer support. And this includes technical assistance, coaching, mentorship, and no-cost consulting services from the world's leading experts to help practitioners advance and complete their climate and energy initiatives. And then finally, our 4th pillar is leadership acceleration. And this is, the way this looks is collaborative design and problem solving events for energy leaders to drive innovation, sharpen their thinking, benefit from high-level peer connection, and increase their confidence in making informed and bold climate action decisions. And each of these programmatic pillars, and really the programs within the pillars, might stand on their own, and they often do in capacity development efforts. But a critical innovation of the Energy Transition Academy is that in our model, they are strategically interlinked to enable and encourage flexible, ongoing, dynamic skill development and support as practitioners' needs evolve. Different people learn in different ways, and diverse needs call for diverse solutions. The Energy Transition Academy is designed to offer a variety of forms of support and meet practitioners where they are as their needs evolve. And we're super laser focused on the user and the user's experience. Next slide, please. So what does this mean for an energy practitioner who might take advantage of ETA? Well, here's a sample or representative user journey. We have Mohammed from Jakarta, who is a sustainability consultant, and he's been asked to figure out how to advise his supply chain partners on procuring renewable energy. Well, depending on where he is in his process, he may engage the Energy Transition Academy resources in a variety of ways. But let's say he's just sort of getting his head around this challenge, and he needs to come up to speed on the mechanics of corporate procurement of renewables. Well, you could start out by using an easy to follow step-by-step interactive how-to guide on procurements, really to get his grounding and maybe to structure out a model procurement that he could use as a sort of case study to advise his partners on. And from there, he could join a free professional development course on this topic. And again, these are sort of project outcome oriented and small cohort-based courses that we've run before and work really, really well. And here he'd further sharpen his know-how, ask real-time questions of expert instructors, and really build his network on this topic. From there, he may choose to join a weekend boot camp focused on corporate procurement, doing a site visit, really getting his hands dirty and getting some hands-on in-person experience and further building his network. Now he may be ready to sort of take all of this learning, take all this network, and talk to more people about it through a community of practice. And he could ask and answer questions, participate in networking and knowledge sharing events, and more. And from there, he may be facing one last sticky issue before he delivers his final recommendations to his supply chain partners, and he's just trying to get this effort over the finish line. With all this background work that he's been doing, with all this learning that he's been doing, he'd be a perfect candidate for our no-cost consulting services through the Ask an Expert program. Now, at this point, Mohammed really knows their stuff, and he may be interested in hosting or being invited to a collaborative problem-solving event with other industry leaders, to co-design some solutions and really identify ways to get at key market-wide challenges. And really, this is how the ETA is designed to work. It's flexible, it's integrated, it's laser focused on helping practitioners get their work done. And one thing that it's not is one size fits all. So how do we pull this off? How do we do this? And this gets back to Vikram's question earlier. If you could advance to the next slide, please. We do it with partners like you. RMI has a lot of expertise, and we're increasingly active in country throughout the Global South. But we can't produce all of the skills development content that's needed to support the clean energy transition, and we don't want to. Similarly, we can't identify all the workforce gaps and convene all of the practitioner audiences and deliver all of the skills development content. And we don't want to. What we want is to work with great partner organizations like your own to leverage the Energy Transition Academy model. We want to work with you to identify the most critical skills gaps in the geographies you're working in and use your expertise to develop and deliver efficient, scalable skills development tools and resources. We want to work with you and other great partners to extend the impact of your expertise and help you reach and serve as many people and institutions as possible. Our whole operating model is built on partnership. If you have expertise that you'd like to share more broadly throughout the Global South, or if you're working with practitioner audiences who would benefit from such expertise, let's talk. Let's talk about it, how ETA can be most useful to you. Next slide, please. So in closing, I'm sorry if I went a little bit over, but we want to work with you to amplify your work and build your stakeholders' skills and know-how as quickly and efficiently as possible. We want to work with you to help you reach many, many more people, because that's what needs to be done if we have any chance on making good on climate commitments in this decisive decade. ETA is first and foremost an approach to capacity development, and we think it's ambitious and innovative. We have our own workforce gap and geographic priorities, but if you're working on solving these problems anywhere in the world, we want to work with you. So let's talk. Please be in touch. We'll send out more information about ETA following this event. But until then, thank you so much for being here with us, and please be in touch.
Thank you so much, Matt, and I really appreciate that. I'd like to invite Mr. Mahrez and Mr. Babumanu to come back on as well for the Q&A session. So far we have very few questions. I'd like to encourage people to drop in more questions into the chat. But we have some preliminary inquiries about, involving youth. How do we get youth involved in this conversation? They are the next generation. They're the ones who are going to be holding these jobs. And if I can just throw another wrench into the works here, how is it that we're using ETA and its various target programs to reach marginalized communities, women? There's a recent report by the IEA that says that, in fact, women do most of the household savings and payments and are much more responsible when it comes to the energy transition and are at the heart of these energy local decisions. Maybe I'll pose that question to you first, Suleiman.
Yeah, thank you very much, Vikram. I think on the subject of youth, especially as it relates to Africa, if we kind of look at the statistics in terms of the number of youth that we have globally, we're looking at something around 3 or 4 billion. you know, and a huge percentage of that live in Africa. And most of these youth in Africa, you know, are in a place with the lowest rates of electrification. And of course, they recognize and are recognizing the fact that, you know, clean energy access is able to address, you know, both if you look at the climate crisis as it relates to maybe insecurity, food security, and things like that. And it's able to, of course, address, you know, the energy access gap within, you know, especially rural communities, which I have seen, you know, very, very like in practice, where you go to rural communities and they know quite well about, you know, the clean energy revolution that is currently going on and are ready to jump on it. On the other hand, it is also important that the sort of clean energy sector is also making it attractive for the for youth to participate in that, and providing opportunities for career growth, almost well competing with the more attractive oil and gas, you know, industry in Nigeria, you know, and also providing opportunities for, you know, groups like women, like you mentioned, and rural communities that live in remote areas, opportunities to be represented, you know, in these conversations. And thankfully, a lot of the projects that we do, of course, have GESI components in there that you're able to, you know, include women and vulnerable population. Over to you, Vikram.
Thank you, Suleiman. Mr. Maris, can you perhaps give us some examples of some of the projects that, you know, CFAN is working on, or is, you know, in the pipe that you have in the pipeline that apply an equity lens or a gender lens to them?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And maybe just to start on how to involve the youth, I think CFAN has been receiving a lot of interest from universities to share our training material and our content. So they are getting that demand from those groups, and therefore they are bringing us also this demand. And we are our network is being joined by universities, and we are free to build those connections. In terms of projects that we are working on, especially in the Pacific, the gender aspect is really critical for us, and the CFAN training as one specific module that looks into how to design a project that doesn't have a gender aspect as an add-on or as a second thought, but really as an integral part of the project. So the way we work on those projects is to ensure that again, it relates to the quality of the project and how you can actually measure in a very transparent manner that you will be achieving benefits and results for women or over a marginalized group. In the Pacific, for example, we are working with also with remote communities and communities that are really on the forefront of the climate impacts. And those communities are very rarely given the opportunity to contribute to the very development of a project, even less the young populations. So the extent of the consultations that we put into developing the projects really make sure that participation is meaningful, and that those projects that we are developing are not for just the next 5 or 10 years. Some of those projects will be implemented over 10, 20, 30 years. So you have no other choice than involving the young generation. They will be the ones not only benefiting from the project, but they will be the ones implementing them. So by involving them already at the conception stage, you make sure that they will be, deriving maximum benefits from them. So yeah, I think on both aspects, contributing to building that next generation of climate professionals through education and training with universities and maybe even schools, business schools and others. It's kind of infinite. The possibilities are infinite. And on the other side, making sure through the training that we are providing that youth are an integral part of the project, of the beneficiaries of the project that we are developing.
Thank you very much. Matt, if I could turn to you, please. As we build the newly integrated ETA platform, what approach will you take to incorporating user feedback in terms of topics and design, given what you just laid out?
Yes, that's a great question. So one of the things that I think our sort of newly constituted sort of energy transition academy team is really focused on is treating this program less like sort of a typical NGO program and more like a product. Like we want to expose the product, its tools, its offering to users early and often, really hammer on the product, test it, does it work, is it valuable, how could it be more valuable, how could it be of more use to you, would you share this with a friend, what rating would you give this out of 10, et cetera. Like we really prioritize user testing and user feedback. So that's just fundamental to the approach we're taking. It's our belief that we can't truly scale capacity development on the clean energy transition without a significant online component, and we can't develop a truly scaled online platform without it providing huge value to users. And so really getting at what is valuable to you is fundamental to our approach. And we have engaged in hundreds of sort of user interviews, partner interviews, et cetera, on sort of the core architecture and approach of the Clean Power Hub. We are incorporating all of that into the ETA. We'll sort of continue this really vital pipeline of user interviews as we continue to sort of refine the ETA platform.
Thank you so much. Very helpful. Suleiman, to put you back in the hot seat, we have a question from Nigeria. How is RMI helping to build local content of those who are in remote communities to handle post-installation maintenance of renewable energy plants? We have seen many mini-grid sites go redundant immediately after commissioning because developers cannot sustain maintenance of the plants due to the remote nature of the sites. Excellent question and a tough one to answer. That's why I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Vikram. I hope I'll be able to do justice to it. So I think, first of all, before going into responding to the capacity building side of the question, I'll be thinking a project that is, that becomes redundant immediately after commission says a lot about the type of projects that has been done in that community, right? And that's why before you even go into developing the capacity of the rural community, you need to ensure the capacity of the developer that is actually implementing that project. And so it starts from, like I mentioned earlier, the selection of the developer who is doing the project. Do they have a track record? Are you able to, point at different projects, that you can make reference to be able to be comfortable around working with them towards building, projects? Because the way the projects are being designed, you have to ensure so many things are put in there, depending on their capacity and depending on the type of projects. If there are smaller standalone projects, what warranties are you putting into the products to ensure that they, sustain a long period? And if it's a mini grid, for example, you must ensure that there is operations and maintenance, contracts that goes into, the development of that project. Site selection is also very, very key. As much as you want to reach out to very remote areas, you also want to apply a least cost electrification model where you are applying the right type of technology to the right type of location, because it doesn't make sense to do an expensive mini grid in a very remote location where access is a problem. And then you're not able to go back and, or even build capacity to sort of make sure that projects are operated and maintained. So you need to be able to address so many things at project development stage before you now think about like, how do you sustain it? Now on the sustainability side and making sure that projects are being maintained. One of the work we're doing under the Africa Energy Program in Nigeria is testing out community-centric mini-grid models, where communities in these remote areas take more ownership of the mini-grid projects in these locations, by way of investing on their behalf to take a percentage of the ownership in terms of investment and whatever revenue comes out of that. A portion of that involves, of course, capacity building, but there's always a level to which you can develop capacity for rural communities. Some of these operations and maintenance work are really pretty basic, like cleaning solar panels. You can teach people to do that. However, when it comes to the more technical bits, of course, you have to rely on the developers to be able to periodically maintain that. So as RMI, we're ensuring that within the project's design, projects are designed in a way that they don't fail immediately. They are supposed to, sustain throughout at least to when the developers are able to, and even for the developers to be able to get their return on investment, because they have to have skin in the game as well in these projects. And of course, testing out these community-centric models to be able to allow communities to take ownership and have a say in running the plants within these locations. These are some of the things that.
Thank you very much. Very technical and thoughtful answer. I have a hard question for Letitia, going back to you, if I may. As our expert in finance, there's been a lot of recent media coverage discussing the limited impact of mainstream ESG investments. How can ESG investments be directed to scale up clean energy projects, especially in low-income countries?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. ESG, environment, social, and governance. Just so we are all on the same page for this acronym. So I believe there's a few things that we could imagine could be enhanced through this approach, and I think one of the first thing that comes to mind, especially in low-income countries, is how we can increase the risk appetite of advisors in those environments. How we can, because that's basically one of the key obstacles of even bringing around the table the different stakeholders, the different actors to develop projects. And I'm not talking about pilot projects here. I think we all agree that the piloting phase is over. We need scale and we need speed. And therefore, we need to have strong investors showing that they see the potential, that they are willing to take on the risk or the initial loss to allow for a project that will get the scale to be transformational and will really change the path of the whole sector. So to me, enhancing the risk appetite of that community of businesses that have embraced this ESG approach is really critical. Second, I think also is, and we've been discussing almost since the beginning of this webinar, is how we sort of how we also grow the workforce, but also basically the business opportunities, the economic opportunities around those projects. Those projects are just one piece of a puzzle. When RMI is developing those projects and support the communities in generating those projects, we also try to think of again the ecosystem and how to maximize the co-benefits of those projects. And those co-benefits are environmental, are social, and are also in terms of governance. How this project will go beyond just its own impact, but will also bring about the transformation. And I think that's also key for those businesses to look beyond that project itself and support efforts to build the workforce, developing the capacity, efforts to create the enabling environment. That could be regulatory support, that can be training for private stakeholders and governments. I think transparency is also a key in those environments, especially in low-income countries, where providing transparency, ensuring that all these stakeholders, all the communities have a voice in the development of those projects and their implementation is critical. So I do think there is a very important role, to play, and this role is leadership. Oh, Vikram, I think you're muted.
Oops, sorry. Very good answer. Thank you for that. And moving from leadership, I wanted to come back to Matt, who laid out a very ambitious agenda for the ETA Energy Transitions Academy for us. What specific role do you see for partners and stakeholders in addition to the users you've spoken about?
Yeah, thank you. And so as I mentioned earlier, we view our entire operating model as being sort of built on partnership. There are so many good organizations, all around the world, local, international, regional, who have been developing deep expertise on how to advance the clean energy transition and really how to sort of deliver capacity development. We view the role of partners in our model as really sort of like being on both ends of the pipeline. We want to work very closely with our local and regional partners to really understand, what is happening within your geography, what are, what issues are standing in the way of progress. How is that a capacity development or skills gap? And maybe what could be done in order to address that. And then we want to work on the other end of the pipeline with maybe the same partner, but possibly completely different partners to really sort of source and develop the right skills and capacity development resources to address that need in country. And if we do that well, and if we begin to sort of cycle up and do that at scale, I think what we're going to find is that, in a given country context, we have worked with a population of project developers, for instance, and we've also worked with a population of local currency debt lenders, for example, and maybe we've also worked with some corporates who are interested in sort of like procuring clean power. And, once those populations within a given market ecosystem or non-market ecosystem, as the case may be, have been capacitated and skilled up, what we can start to do through our platform is really meaningfully connect them and say, hey, Project X, we have some financiers who are interested in exactly your kind of work. And if you guys can get together and pull something off, we also have some corporates downstream who will buy that power from you. And so I think we have a model that's very much built on partnership in terms of really identifying what the local challenges are and really identifying which audiences would best benefit from capacitation on that challenge. And then working upstream, like with international, regional partners, et cetera, to sort of like source and develop really compelling, high value capacity development tools and resources, as I described earlier. And then putting it all together. But I think what's going to be really compelling about where we are in 2, 3, 5 years is this ability to sort of like take these capacitated communities and sort of like put them together and get work done, right? Because it's just like it's not enough to have political commitment, and just like it's not enough to have finance, it's not enough just to have sort of capacitated populations of professionals. They need to be operating in a functional ecosystem. And I think through this platform, over time, we can start to sort of bring those ecosystems together.
Thank you very much. We're coming up on time, but I wanted to have one last question, and I wanted to direct it back at Mr. Babamanu, because you are obviously a practitioner on the ground. What near-term impacts and specific outcomes do you hope to achieve by partnering with the ETA in the next 1 to 3 years? Can you be specific, please, about what you hope to see?
Well, to be very specific, Vikram, we want to see projects being built, beyond, like Matt mentioned, bringing everything together. I mean, as you have alluded to our radical implementation at RMI, we want to go beyond, the thinking kind of phase to, go into actually doing, and then progressively go into scaling. So we are at a point where we have kind of a good understanding and alignment with different partners on how we want to develop projects. And this is all around not only understanding the business model, but developing also the capacity within, different stakeholders. So essentially what we want to see is, a proof of concept that we've done these projects and we're ready to scale it up, all as a result of the fact that we've been able to work together to fully understand what needs to happen for good, viable, attractive, sustainable projects to happen.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mares, 1 minute for closing remarks.
Thank you, Vikram. And maybe I just would like to look forward and what's coming. I think we are going to meet as an international community in Sharm el-Sheikh. I can't believe it's in a month and a half now, or very close. And again, we are going to assess that we are not on track to stay below 1.5 degrees Celsius of global warming. And we will hear the same, the same call for speeding up action and go faster in deploying means of implementation. I hope that we have convinced members of the audience today to bring to the forefront that we need to ensure we have the boots on the ground. We have the professionals able to translate those talks into action. And for that, we really need a renewed approach to developing capacity, as Matt was saying. It's always been the orphan, I would say, of the climate discussion. Now we really have to invest in people, in human capital. And I hope our political decision makers will come to that realization, and something inspiring will come out of the next big gathering in Sharm el-Sheikh.
Thank you so much. Over to you, Matt. 1 minute for closing remarks, please.
I'm at a little bit of a loss because Letitia just said so perfectly what I was thinking of saying. Yes, so setting my feet, it's incredibly important that we, as an international community, bilaterals, multilaterals, philanthropic funders, international NGOs, large and small, local NGOs, it is incredibly important that we do not take for granted how big of a challenge workforce and capacity development is. Like, we have absolutely got to get this right. Otherwise, the last few decades of work will have been for naught. We have to build these projects, as Suleiman said, at scale. We have got to translate all of these talks and political commitments into boots in the ground and people actually doing the work, as Letitia said. We cannot be bored by capacity development. It is crucial to actually getting this done. And with the political world that's lining up, with the economics of clean energy, with the finance that's becoming available slowly but surely, like, we have a chance, but not if we don't have the people to do the work. So, like, I guess my call to arms for everybody is, do not overlook how important this is. Do not think it's boring. It is vitally important. And maybe I'm saying this from a wounded position because I'm a longtime energy efficiency person, and energy efficiency is often overlooked. But workforce and capacity development cannot be overlooked if we're going to succeed this decade. So just really, I'll say it again if you let me, but just please don't overlook it.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Clearly, you are passionate about the issue. I agree that Letitia had the perfect ending remarks and kind of stole my thunder. If I may, in 2 to 3 minutes, just wrap this up. You know, coming out of COP26, there was a lot of disappointment and a lot of conversation around, you know, the global north not meeting its commitments, its financial commitments, and reaching the $100 billion target. And, you know, RMI hears that, is disappointed by that. But what we are trying to do is really flip the script here, from geographies that are standing there with their hands out, looking for, you know, a handout. We're now trying to very much empower these communities, empower Global South leaders, voices, ensuring that they're in control of their own destinies and can make their own decisions for how they approach economic growth. And let's face it, that's what this is ultimately about, putting them in the driver's seat to choose their drivers for economic growth. And so hopefully that's come through in today's conversation. Another point I wanted to emphasize that I began with is really about ecosystems. We are meeting users where they are. You know, approaching this issue is very different in the Caribbean. It's very different in Africa and Nigeria, where Mr. Babu Manu is sitting. It's very different in Southeast Asia. So as we look at the energy value chain, as I laid it out before, very simplistically, upstream, enabling environment, midstream project preparation, getting projects scaled, downstream linking them to climate finance, you know, workforce development, capacity development, good quality jobs is cross-cutting all of that. And so, you know, RMI is really to be commended for a full suite approach in terms of how we're approaching this very complex issue. And then finally, I just wanted to end on the note that, you know, ultimately we can talk about the just energy transition, we can talk about megawatts, and we can talk about where the world is going with, you know, new quantified goals. But you know, this is about people-centric models, putting people at the center of the energy transition. And whether that's happening in the field of technology with the acquisition of the Clean Power Hub, whether that's happening through CFAN and the amazing work that they're doing by embedding finance advisors all throughout the world, or the work that Mr. Babu Manu is doing in scaling microgrids and DERs in Nigeria and soon to be across Africa. We're seeing that this is really about people. I guess with that, I'm being prompted to the last slide. To learn more, we encourage you to visit energytransitionacademy.net. We have a temporary website up for now. There will be a more permanent website up for COP. We encourage you to visit the CFAN website, cfanadvisors.org, which has just also been updated. We are delighted that you joined us today. Thank you for staying with us for an hour and a half. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to a renewed commitment to this work and to the people of the Global South. Thank you so much.